How did we, with all the intelligence that we credit ourselves with, let the design of this society go so wrong as to allow suffering from scarcity in a world of plenty? What if we co created a world in which every life, including human, is worth celebrating? A resilient world. How would that world look and feel? Now, that quest took me on a 2.5 year long deep learning journey across rural India. And I witnessed communities all along the spectrum, right from the most vulnerable to the most resilient. The journey led me to define a resilient community as one in which the inhabitants practice harmonious interdependence and employ ecologically sustainable means to achieve self reliance in 9 basic needs: food and water security, shelter, clothing, healthcare, energy, connectivity, economy, disaster management, and education. I then founded Proto Village in 2014 on 12.5 acres of absolutely barren land in a village called Teklodu within the second driest district in India, Anantapur. And it was supposed to be a space for systemic solutions for rural resilience to be collaboratively developed, refined, practiced, demonstrated, and openly shared. It's a prototype of a resilient rural community completely built by the villagers for the villagers. Now, being a prototype, it is not enough to be an island of excellence. We need to build into its design something that enables rapid replication. Out of the 9 basic needs, we recognized education and economy as the points of leverage, as in, if they are designed well, they together have the potential to enable rural transformation at scale. We've learned that education has the potential to be the compass that shows the direction a good society ought to take. And that economy, on the other hand, has the potential to incentivize whenever that direction is taken. I wish to leverage my time on this forum to share my views on how we are reimagining rural education and about the education model that we are prototyping at Proto Village. First, let me share what I think is a good society and why we need a different rural education system. My journey and my time with the tribals taught me 4 extremely vital yet ridiculously obvious things. Number 1, that healthy natural ecosystems make our life possible. Number 2, a deep sense of community that makes us feel safe, secure, loved, and filled with a worthy purpose makes our life worth living. A good society invests itself in building healthy natural ecosystems and happy communities. Obvious, isn't it? And 4th, since the natural constitution varies from one region to the other, the age-old wisdom that helps us design a lifestyle that preserves, nurtures, and nourishes whatever makes our life possible and worth living, what is called the indigenous wisdom for that region. Now, most rural kids grow up in an environment in which this knowledge of synergistic coexistence or the indigenous wisdom is embedded into their lifestyles. Besides their deep sense of community, they naturally have a great affinity towards their surroundings, including forests, mountains, rivers, deserts, wildlife, wide open countrysides, etc. Now, this indigenous wisdom that gets passed on from one generation to the next, while it is absolutely essential, it's also undocumented and so is super fragile. It survives as long as people live by it, but the loss of this knowledge not only disconnects us from, but also makes us indifferent to the very things that make our life possible and worth living. Now, most of us in the cities suffer from this loss, and this loss is at the heart of climate crisis as well. Now, such is the importance of this indigenous wisdom. Tribes to a large extent and villages to a relatively lesser extent are the safe spaces for this knowledge to survive and potentially even thrive. They're like the lighthouse that guides those that are lost to a safe way home. Now, when rural kids and the urban kids go through the same one shoe fits all kind of an education system with hardly anything rural in its content, the rural kids grow up to become increasingly disconnected from their own natural and social context and therefore feel encouraged to think that a job in the city is the ultimate mark of success. If the mark of success of education for a rural kid is an urban job, and if that education system does well, then eventually the education is serving to export every kid out of the village. So, in the name of rural development, if we have an education system that serves to send every kid out to get an urban job, we don't have to do rural development for long because we won't have villages left. As dark as it may sound, when this happens and when the last keeper of the indigenous wisdom passes away, the villages become intellectually bankrupt and the villagers fall from being the empowered producers of abundance to being the helpless consumers of charity. Then urbanization as a way to help these helpless villagers suddenly seems like a legitimate solution. Now, please don't get me wrong here. For a rural kid to have an urban aspiration is not a bad thing at all. Migration by choice should absolutely be possible and encouraged even. But if there is an education system that encourages the learners to nurture urban aspirations, we must also have an education system that encourages them to understand their ecosystems and communities deeply and to explore how a life of abundance can be made possible right there in the villages. Then the learner is actually empowered to make the choice. Since there is good on both the sides, what if we took the best of both and made it available to the rural kids in the form of a system that allows for a diversity of aspirations to thrive? This is what we are attempting to co-create at Proto Village. We found our inspiration for the design of an education in a healthy forest. A forest is a thriving ecosystem of diverse, interdependent species coexisting and operating in harmony, individually and collectively contributing to the perpetuation of the miracle of life. A seed needs no teaching as to how to grow, and not every seed will grow into a big tree. And what it ought to be and how is all within the seed. All it needs is a conducive environment to thrive. As each seed grows into a unique tree, there is diversity in the forest. So preserving uniqueness of each causes the diversity at the whole. And when there is diversity, there is interdependence. And when there is interdependence, there is harmony. Inspired by this, over the last 6 years, we have iteratively developed an evolving framework for rural education. We classified the body of knowledge into 4 columns, each of which represents a specific thematic learning journey. The first one is self, and this learning journey takes the learner from understanding the very basic physiology all the way to the practice of maintaining physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual balance. For example, how to stay calm in the chaos and stay on the mean line when life seems like a sine curve. The next learning journey is environment, and this perhaps will be the largest chunk of the content. And this learning journey has 5 substreams: natural history, social history, political, economic history, and technological history. The next learning journey is expression. And this learning journey sees the learner leverage languages, arts, etc., and everything else she is learning from the other learning journeys to seek and find how she can contribute to the world in her own unique way. This inculcates a tendency to look for meaning, responsibility, and fulfillment in our life instead of focusing on just rights and privileges. The last learning journey is called the tools. Tools are those that help learners make sense of the world and contribute to it. So examples are the math, sciences, reasoning, communication, digital skilling, and whatever else. Having said all this, we recognize that life doesn't offer challenges based on what we know and whether we know calculus or not. We should learn to adapt and evolve. And this happens only when we allow for life itself to provide the context and the motivation for learning. For this, we added 9 rows which represent the 9 basic needs. And these 9 basic needs have 700 constituent activities that add up to fulfilling them. And then we map these 700 activities to the concepts in math and science, ensuring that every concept in the regular board curriculum, from the simplest at the lower grades to the most complicated in the higher grades, is mapped to at least one of the activities. Learners do not perform the activities to learn the concepts. They master the concepts to gain mastery over the activities. For example, our learners are using ratios and proportions at the very basic to make organic fertilizers for the farmers. They are building electronic solutions to deter wild boars and deer from causing damage to the farms without actually harming the animals. They are using algebra and linear programming to identify crop combinations that optimize a farmer's profit, etc. etc. Now, every act of learning this way is actually solving a problem and causing positive impact in the community, thus making their knowledge locally relevant and sought after while making them globally competent. The evolving knowledge of a learner in all the 4 columns helps her become more and more efficient in performing the activities that collectively add up to the resilience of a community. And most importantly, it adds up to her own physical, intellectual, spiritual, and emotional resilience. We call this the contextual purpose-based learning. As I close this talk, I have an invitation and a question for you all. We are on a mission to further refine and mainstream this kind of an education for rural India, and we invite you to join and support us on this adventure. And the question I have for you is, should we actually limit this kind of an education for just the rural India? Thank you.